everyone out there in Podlayer land, and welcome to our first ever episode of The Mojo Show. My name is Jailene, and I'll be guiding you through these series. So who am I? Well, I'm a Podlayer producer and an advanced student with a Mojo reading accuracy level of 90% plus. The Mojo Show is affiliated with our flagship show, Podlayer Planet. So what is this show about? This show is about topics such as Mojo, Mojo reading, social alchemy that are related to the Mojo Dojo pathway, and also a bit of Mojo journalism. This episode is going to be a class orientation. So we're going to be talking about Mojo a lot during this series. So where do you begin? You begin with learning how to read Mojo. So that's where we're going to start. The methodology that we use here in Podlayer is called the 5 gears of Mojo reading. In 5 gears, what we do is correlate the physiological manifestations that humans have to cognitive functioning and processes. So as I said, we have 5 gears. We start off with the first gear. The first gear is all about the pod powers and being able to see those, like being able to spot different colors in an artist's palette. We have 8 powers, 8 pod powers we call them, and they are actually, we correlate them to different colors. So think of it as an artist's palette and gaining your, fashioning your lens to be able to see those colors in the human palette. So to start seeing that difference between the different pod powers, that artist's palette, I brought in Adimas. So he'll be helping me out today with showing the distinction between Jai and Ji pod power. I have Jai and Adimas has Ji. So we call the way we refer to Jai versus Ji difference is Jai unaware versus Ji aware, and that is because of what the powers are designed to do, or how they function, makes it so that the Jai has an unaware expression and the Ji has an aware expression. Let's bring Adimas closer here. See,
he's getting aware all of a sudden.
Yes. So Jai, because it's internally resonating, it has an unaware expression because it's not really meant to be connecting or conveying a message that will directly move the social dynamics. It's more internally resonating. And the Ji though is supposed to be moving and connecting with those social dynamics, so it's aware and aware to the audience. So this is what Jai and Ji
looks like.
The reason why we chose to highlight Ji and Jai first is that they are the values-based powers, and so they are responsible for the emotive expressioning of the faces. So it's something that is very notable in people's expressions, so a good place to start. One more thing to note for Jai versus Ji is that you'll see when the muscles are moving of the face that they will have different looks with Ji and Jai. So for Jai, you'll see that even as I'm not just the shape of the mouth where the Jai expresses itself, but also in the way that the muscles move, it will have more of a downturn movement or angle. Whereas with the Ji, like Adimas, when he articulates or expresses, and that will be shared with other Ji users, it will have an upward trend and angle movement. So look for that. Now we move on to Gear 2. Gear 2, as you know, is about the 2 powers creating a field. So we'll highlight it using me. I'm an adaptive, so I start with the right field over the left directive field, whereas Coach here, he is a directive, meaning he starts on the left field of
my Ji,
Nai and the Ji, and has the adaptive as his second one.
Side B.
So one of the cues that it will express itself in is the yin versus the yang gesturing. So for me, being an adaptive first, I'll have, and you'll see this throughout all the filmings, I have the yin gesturing as natural, and yin gesturing, as you know, soft of wrists, back of the hands, and not conducting, not going out into the
more
personal.
Gumby-ish.
Yeah.
There's more soft.
More soft, because it's not conducting, and it does not as comfortable coming out of the personal field.
I also have that because I'm a human, so I also do those same gestures. But you'll notice that it's altered state. There's still tension, so although I'm doing adaptive motion, there's still part of me that's resisting the adapting, and that's this field over here. This larger directive field is resisting being completely adaptive. I'm trying now. See, I'm flopping them, but they're not like hers. They're not loose like that. I can't make them do that.
Magic. So natural, I have natural yin gesturing, whereas Coach has altered yin gesturing. For him, the natural is yang gesturing, which is more rigid of wrist. It's conductor-like. It is very comfortable coming out of the personal range into the group environment. You'll see that with all of the directive mojos, they share that. And there'll be like variations within that, but they do share the yang gesturing traits. Whereas for me, when I do yang gesturing, it looks what we call altered. So it's not my natural state. And so you'll still see the softness, you'll still see the rolling of the wrists, which is indicative of that yin gesturing. But it doesn't mean that I won't do it or that other adaptives won't do yang gesturing. There are actually some riffs of adaptives that actually do use a lot of yang gesturing because of the different conditionings, different experiences in life, but it still will not look natural, and natural as Coach does it, and vice versa. And so you'll see this expressed.
That when they're talking, they're very like deferring, and so they use a lot of the yin gesturing, but at no point will it look like hers, and that's what the reading she's going to help you learn and teach you. You'll still see it.
Yeah.
Even if the Jaini is never ever actually doing a yin gesture the whole time, the yinness will still come through, even in the yang gesturing.
Yep. Now we get into gear 3. And gear 3 at this point, it's not just referring to one single power like gear 1 or the 2 powers that comprise a field like gear 2. We're at this point talking about the powers, the pod powers that are manifesting in a person that you're reading, and the conflagration of cues that these pod powers comprise, and also the distinct signals then that person is giving off because of that conflagration and because of the how those pod powers that the person has are playing and the signals that they're sending out. In order to show you what a conflagration is and how it comes about, I'm going to use myself as an example. As a Jaini, I have the powers of Jai, Ni, Vi, and Zi as conscious, which means that I am an adaptive, I am subjective, I am a lead discerner, I'm values-based, and I'm interpretive. All my powers and my fields, they give themselves away. How do they give themselves away? Let's look at a Jai. I have the unaware Jai expression. That's a giveaway. The Ni, the dancing eyes, the Ni dancing eyes. That's another giveaway. With the Vi, you have the checks to the left. That's a dead giveaway. And with Z, the cool articulation, the jutting, the anvil, that's a dead giveaway. Here are some other examples of Jaini women who will share the same kinds of conflagrations as I do, which I just pointed out to you. They are Adele Atkins, Joan Allen, Gillian Anderson, Gabrielle Anwar, Christina Applegate, Patricia Arquette, Joan Baez, Kathy Baker, Kate Beckinsale, and Maria Bello. All of them will share those conflagrations that all Jaini have. So look for that. Next we have Jaini males. Now they'll have similar conflagrations as the Jaini females, but there'll be some variance because they are male versus female, so there's some difference there. So when you look at these different people that I'm about to list off to you, you'll notice that they have this shared conflagration of cues, and here they are. You have Alan Alda, Gael Garcia Bernal, Michael Serra, Clifton Collins Jr., John Cryer, Robert Downey Jr., Paul Giamatti, Jack McBrayer, Giovanni Ribisi, and Sam Rockwell. All awesome Jaini male, and you'll notice those similar conflagrations because they are that same mojo. Next up we have Jaini females. Now what you'll notice with them, you'll notice some similarities to the Jaini, but you'll get some other cues, some different cues within their conflagrations because they do have a different tandem power. And so here are some examples of Jaini women. You have Jessica Alba, Halle Berry, Helena Christensen, Penelope Cruz, Megan Fox, Beyonce Knowles, Juliette Lewis, Madonna, Rihanna, and Gwen Stefani. They will all share the same configuration of cues because they are all Jaini. And here are some examples of Jaini males. You have Rafael Nadal, Ronaldinho, and Casper Smart. They'll all share the same configurations. Next up we have Jaini female. Now you'll notice again these have the same configuration of cues, and here they are: Naomi Campbell, Miley Cyrus, Star Jones, S. Apatha Murkison, Felicia Rashad, Julia Roberts, Sharon Stone, Gabriella Union, Ming Na Wen, and Oprah Winfrey. Of the Jaini male, also sharing that same configuration of cues that Jaini male do. You have Simon Baker, Josh Bernstein, Richard Branson, Pierce Brosnan, Matt Damon, Rashad Evans, Michael Fassbender, Andy Garcia, Barack Obama, and Jon Stewart. Next, I'm going to list off some Jivi female, which will have similar cues as the Jaini female, but again, will have some major differences because of that different tandem power. So you'll see a different configuration of cues with them. So you have, for Jivi, you have Tyra Banks, Giselle Bundchen, Julie Chen, Ann Curry, Teresa Giudice, Carrie Ann Inaba, Kris Jenner, and Jennifer Lopez, all Jivi female. Next up, Jivi male. With Jivi male, you have David Hasselhoff, Frank Shamrock, Ken Shamrock, and Joe Theismann, all sharing the same configuration of cues. Next up, the Nez world. Let's start off with the Naiji males. They'll all share the same type of configuration of cues. Who are they? Let's see. We have Paul Thomas Anderson, Alec Baldwin, Robert Carlyle, David Chappelle, Bill Clinton, Daniel Day-Lewis, Eminem, Ian McKellen, George St. Pierre, and Christopher Walken, all sharing those Naiji male cues. With Naiji females, they'll have the same configurations but expressed differently again because it's in the female gender. You have Kathy Bates, Jessica Biel, Blair Brown, Coco Chanel, Judi Dench, Scarlett Johansson, Diane Kruger, Natalie Portman, Laura Prepon, J.K. Rowling, and Anna Torv, all Naiji women. Moving on to Naizi women now. Now they'll have similar conflagration of cues to the Naiji female, but again, it will be different because of that tandem power. So who do we have for that? We have Chelsea Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Tina Fey, Michelle Forbes, Chelsea Handler, Joan Jett, Ellen Page, Jada Pinkett Smith, Numi Rapace, and Sigourney Weaver. All Naizi women. And so when you look at them, you'll see that shared configuration of cues. How about the Naizi male? You can't leave them out. You have Christian Bale here, Simon Cowell, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Ice-T, Jeremy Irons, Jay-Z, David Letterman, Viggo Mortensen, Clive Owen, Zachary Quinto, and Joe Rogan. So again, you'll see those Naizi shared configuration of cues with these different Naizi males. Now let's talk about the adaptiveness. So we'll start off with Nijai female. They'll all have that same configuration of cues. Who do we have there? We have Christina Aguilera, Jennifer Aniston, Miranda Baccarin, Lucille Ball, Juliette Binoche, Alison Brie, Sandra Bullock, Carrie Byron, June Carter Cash, Jake Castrinos. Next up, Nijai male. They'll all share the same configuration of cues. So who are they? Russell Brand, Mark Dacascos, Joel Grey, Josh Holloway, Grant Imahara, Hugh Jackman, Chris Kattan, Martin Short, Justin Timberlake, and Vilma Valderrama, just to give you an idea of who the Nijai male would look like, and so you can start honing in on what that configuration of cues looks like in real life. Well, what about Nizai female? Nizai female, they'll have that similar configuration of cues again. Who are they? We have Joey Lauren Adams, Malin Akerman, Krista Allen, Carol Alt, Madchen Amick, Lonnie Anderson, Samir Armstrong, Jesse Arrington, Coco Austin, Millie Avital, Feruza Balk, and Ellen Barkin. Again, take a look at them. They're all Nizai. We'll share those configuration of cues. As for Nizai male, we have Will Arnett, Hank Azaria, Steve Carell, Jim Carrey, Stephen Colbert, Alan Cummings, Chris Frangiola, Bill Gates, Conan O'Brien. Take a look at these. You'll notice all of these Nizai male configuration of cues. Onto the Zez realm. We start off with Zaini female. Zaini female, they're all going to be sharing configuration cues. We have Jean Davis, Ariane Friedrich, Ashley Olsen, Elizabeth Olsen, and Mary Kate Olsen. Then we have Zaini males. Okay, they'll have the same kind of configuration of cues. We have Tom Baker, Macaulay Culkin, John Delancey, Robert England, Jeff Goldblum, Doug Jones, Stephen Merchant, Bill Nye, the science guy, David C. Page, Jim Parsons, Martin Rees, and Pavlo Siljamaki. What about the Zai-V female? They'll share a lot of the cues that the Zaini female do, but they'll look different. You'll have different things because of that V tandem power. So with Zai-V female, we have Kim Cloisters, Elena Dementieva, Nikki Hilton, Yelena Yankovic, Liz Fair, Daenerys Safina, Carrie Walsh, Serena Williams, and Venus Williams. All Zai-V female. On to Zai-V male. Zai-V male sharing that same configuration of cues that all Zy female do. Some of them, here we have Mike Amarati, David Attenborough, Joseph Campbell, Vinnie DiMartino, Clint Eastwood, Al Gore, Hugh Hefner, Jamie Heineman, Stan Lee, and Rick Petco, all Zy female. In the directive Zez camp, we're starting off with Xeni female. So here are some Xeni female that share that same configuration of cues. We have Maria Bartiromo, Carol Bartz, Natalie Battaglia, Joy Behar, Sue Decker, Susie Essman, Melinda Gates, Ariana Huffington, Rosie O'Donnell, Sarah Seeger, and there you go, Xeni female. In the Xeni male camp, we have Terry Bradshaw, Dick Butkus, Jay Glazer, Zahi Hawaz, Jimmy Johnson, Howie Long, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ryan Seacrest, Donald Trump, Jesse Ventura, all sharing that Xeni male configuration of cues. On the Vez side of the equation, we have, starting off with Zy female. So, what's a Zy female going to look like? How do you pick up their configuration of cues? Take a look at Gretchen Carlson, Sarah Ferguson, Michelle Malkin, Sarah Palin, and Andrea Tanteros, all Zy females. Take a look. Then you have Zy males. Zy males, what do they look like? Have Michael Bisping, Sean Hannity, Terry Shepard, Matt Serra, Brian Stan. Take a look at them. Zy males. Now we're in the Vez side of the equation. Let's start off with Vijay female. What do Vijay female look like? How can you spot their configuration of cues? Well, take a look at Pamela Anderson, Drew Barrymore, Rachel Bilson, Ariane Celeste, Kelly Clarkson, Cameron Diaz, Goldie Hawn, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Kim Kardashian, Little Kim, and Hayden Panettiere. All Vijay. Take a look, soak up that scent, that configuration of cues. How about Vijay male, you may ask? For Vijay male, take a look at John Gosselin and David Salmoni. They'll share those same configuration of cues as the Vijay female that you took a look at, but with that little different spice of their men. So I'll add some differences there that we'll get into in later episodes. Staying with the adaptive Vez mojos, let's look at Vizai females. So what does a Vizai female look like? How can you spot her? How can you start soaking up those configuration of cues? Take a look at Layla Ali, Victoria Beckham, Paris Hilton, Brooke Hogan, Shawn Johnson, Misty May Traynor, and Kendra Wilkinson. All awesome Vizai females. Take a look at them, soak it in, get those signals coming into your brain. And what do Vizai males look like? Okay, let's see. Charles Barkley, George W. Bush, John Caparulo, Craig Ferguson, Bear Grylls, Terry Hulk Hogan, Kevin James, Jay Leno, Brock Lesnar, Shaquille O'Neal. Take a look at them. Those are all Vizai males. Soak it in. How about directive Vez, you might ask? Glad you asked. We're starting off with Vaiji female. What do Vaiji female look like? How can you soak in their configuration of cues? Well, take a look at Barbara Boxer, Margaret Carlson, Liz Cheney, Lynn Cheney, Marsha Clark, Shannon Doherty, Kate Goslin, Padma Lakshmi, Joan London. All of them are Vaiji female, and you could start picking up on those cues. For Vaiji males, the way you can pick up on that Vaiji maleness is take a look at Yasser Arafat, Tom Brokaw, Reggie Bush, Carl Cameron, C. Dick Cheney, Dick Clark, Anderson Cooper, Nick Diaz, Bernie Goldberg, Mike Huckabee, Bill O'Reilly, all of them by Gmail. All of them share that same configuration of cues. Take a look, you'll start seeing it. About YZ females. How do you spot those? What's your frame of reference? For that, take a look at Sally Ride. Right now, we don't have more than one, but we know that when we get into different fields that are outside of the public eye, we're expecting to see a lot more YZ female. But for now, take a look at Sally Ride, start getting an idea of what a YZ female looks like. You start soaking that in, and then look for more. Last but not least, we have YZ males. How can you start spotting YZ males? What's your frame of reference? Well, take a look at Troy Aikman, Buzz Aldrin, Richard Armitage, Lance Armstrong, Hank Baskett, David Beckham, Larry Bird, Bjorn Borg, Tom Brady, Bob Bryan, and Mike Bryan. All YZ male. Take a look and start soaking in those cues and configurations. Every power has a distinct signal, which means that when you are reading someone, there will be that source power will have like the highest ratio of energy signal that is being sent out, which we call the distinct signal. There are 8 distinct signals to go along with the powers. We have the Zhi poignancy and the Xi inflappability, the Ni buoyancy and V amped, the Ni dissatisfaction and Vi concern, and the Z bracing and the G caring. Those are the 8 distinct signals. So you can use it as an example. Jack McBrayer and Jim Parsons, they're both Nest Towers. One is a Xi Ni and one is a Zhi Ni. Jack McBrayer Zhi Ni, Jim Parsons Xi Ni. So they'll share some similar things, but that distinct signal will be different. So with James McBrayer, you'll see that Zhi poignancy as his distinct signal, whereas with Jim Parsons, you'll see the Xi inflappability as the distinct signal. So you know there may be some similarities shared, but that's a distinct signal that you can start honing in on to differentiate and to start reading people. Next up we have 4th gear. What is 4th gear about? Well, 4th gear is about starting to tell the distinctions, the variations, the game styles within a particular mojo. We call those riffs. At this point of reading, it gets more tacit. So you're reading those individual cues of the pod powers in the fields, and then you're telling the configuration of cues, but you're picking up on more tangible things and you're going more tacit as it goes on. There are different game styles that you have within a mojo, and you know it's really cool because it gives you like a lot of advanced information on a person at this point, on a human, because you're not just reading their particular configuration, but also how they project that and use that configuration that they have to engage their powers. There's a variety of riffs, so you can have riffs that are physiological, there are riffs that are just the gesturing, or just the mouth, or it can be developmental riffs. One of the really awesome things about when you start reading and you get up to those higher levels with the 4th gear is you start seeing all these different connections between humans. So like start really seeing the human matrix, seeing like the variations, you know, the commonalities, like the different mojos, and then the variations of playing styles within them and how they all connect. You can start seeing, you know, your similarities with like your, you know, people from different nationalities, genders, physiology, you know, it's just sexual orientations, you know, like it just creates this common bond with other humans, which is you know, a crucial thing, and for us as humans to be able to move to the next level and really ups, you know, your EQ level, as it were. So so you definitely have to be, you know, you can't help but have to be cool with your fellow human when you start to Mojo read. Then we get into the highest gear, which is gear 5. Gear 5 is all about how the energy signals, how everything hits you, and so it can be very much of an unconscious process at first. You know, it's the most tacit of the gears in reading. So it's about how someone hits you and your state of mind also as you're reading that person. So it takes a lot of mastery, self-mastery, and awareness to really be aware of your own processes and therefore in your state of mind, therefore how you're actually reading all other humans, the environment, everything around you, how your lens is configured, as it were. And that's a really tricky thing, you know. It's something that definitely requires some hardcore kensei to master this gear. Because it is so much about state of mind, gear 5 is very, sensitive. A lot of things can affect it, such as stress. When you're stressed, things are going to hit you differently, and you're going to be off when you read. So you have to be aware of that. Fatigue also, so you won't read as well when you're fatigued, as when you're not. Because certain, fears, insecurities, whatever will come up in the reading process when you are tired. And also things such as attachment. So if you have like a really good friend or family member who's there as you're reading, you can have those unconscious projections from that other person on you as you're reading, so that they can hem you in from, actually having a clear picture, clear read of another human. There are all these different factors that affect you when you're reading. So you want to be in an ideal state of reading. It is what we call quasi-state. That's when your conscious and unconscious are communicating with one another. And that's when your unconscious can give you the most help to your conscious when you're reading, and give you the most and best information. So that's what you want to try to be at when you're doing reading. That's really like when you're going to have the clearest lens. You're going to be able to make your reads in a much, in the most clear and accurate way. So you want to try to be in that state when you're doing your readings. And so we'll talk about how to get into that state. An important thing to note about Mojo reading is that you won't always be in your ideal state. Mojo reading is a process that goes along concurrently with your development process, and with any learning process, you have times when you're going along and you're learning how to Mojo read, and then you think you've gotten to a really solid point, and you're making accurate guesses on all these different people and reading really well, and then you'll come to like someone and you'll try to read them and you'll get an incorrect answer, something that was totally out of your field of vision. It's normal. That will happen with the learning process. You just have to, your confidence, like it's happened to us, here in Podler as, the students, it happens, where you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have wrong reads, and that's going to, your confidence is going to drop, and when that happens, you just have to remodel. You have to come back to the table and say, why did that happen? And a lot of times it has to do with your own apparatus and developing that, and realizing that you had maybe some bias that you didn't realize that you had, but now that you're aware of it, you can calibrate your lens so that you read correctly going forward. And that's just part of the process with Mojo reading. You just have to be comfortable with the process of remodeling. Just really allow yourself that. Don't be too hard on yourself with this learning process. It really is a continual life process. It's the funnest thing ever, but it is a process, and you'll have those ups and downs, but just keep going. Allow yourself to have those times where you have mistakes, where your confidence gets rocked, and then you have to just, take those learning lessons, absorb them, but recover and then come back. And when you'll be stronger, you'll be more confident, you'll have more accurate reads, and you'll go on from there. Reading humans is very much an art, so think of it as you're reading a work of art. You have to approach it in that way in order to really be able to appreciate it. It's very much, we talked about the pod powers like an artist's palette. When you put it all together into configuration, you're putting it into a work of art. So you have a human, it's a work of art. You need to approach it in that way and honor them in order to really get a proper read of someone. And if you can't put yourself into that state of mind, then you really shouldn't be doing reading, because you should be excited about, what you're reading. One thing that you'll find as you start being able to read other people is that you'll have to deal with, having people respect your process, because you'll have those ideal states of reading. You'll have to be in a certain state of mind. We talked about, needing to be detached. So attachment is is something that you need to deal with and will affect your reads. And you might find that once people realize that you can read, they will start asking you for reads, and you might not at that time be in a good state of mind to actually be doing the reads. So just one of the things that you'll need to do is start managing that relationship with the world as they start learning that you can do this, and start having them understand how reading works, what the process is, and articulating that to them so they can understand that reading is not a light task, and that they should respect the process of doing it. I just told you about the 5 gears of Mojo reading, so what has the Podlayer team done with this language so far? Well, we've read 20,000 plus people, or samples as we call them, so far, and our goal is to have a list of 10,000 people that are famous or relevant, have enough media so everybody could look at it, and so far we have 494 samples in our shiny shard available to you. So we'll be building that up to that 10,000 magic number. So why is this 10,000 list, the virtual village, so important? Well, first, this is a universal case. These samples, the 10,000 different samples, will be ones that anyone, anywhere can go to their computer, to YouTube or some other video provider and look at ample footage from these people, and so we can share ideas and train people anywhere around the world, and that is really, really important. The virtual village is also groundbreaking proof of concept to demonstrate that the phenomenon is indeed real. The virtual village also includes different mojos from different backgrounds, different stories that will illustrate to anyone who's looking at the connections between all humans, between yourself and all the people in the virtual village, and all of those in your environment and beyond. So imagine yourself having learned how to read Mojo, going out there to anywhere in the world and being able to see the world with unprecedented eyes, see what's truly going on, see the stories that are happening in front of everyone's eyes that they don't even know about. This is the essence of Mojo journalism, and the virtual village is just the start to show you how to be able to do that. As you start looking at the people that we've included in the virtual village, you'll start noticing some very interesting patterns that are existing in fields across the world. For example, one that we found really interesting is seeing a predominance of Vaiji mojos in politics. Now that's very telling from a Mojo journalism perspective. We'll get into that, but it's very telling, these patterns that form within certain fields, different ways of life, really inform on the story of the world, what's really occurring out there. These patterns also demonstrate the fact that the current reads of so-called experts in people reading and their general conceptions about Mojo spreads in different fields, ways of life in general, are very off. Another thing we'll be talking about a lot in this show is social alchemy and how it relates to people dynamics. You have people that are emanating pod power signals at all times that are interacting with other people who are also emanating their own pod power signals, and the resulting effects on the dynamics can be studied objectively through social alchemy. Check out the episode 7 of the Podlair Planet Show to find out all about social alchemy. To really help illustrate the social alchemy relationships, there are different groupings that go from your own mojo, the one cell, the recognition, to the all, to the collective. And there are 20 different groupings. You start off with the design recognition, and that is your own mojo. For me, that would be Jai-Ni, which is my mojo. Then you have the groupings that inform on the relationships of two, so the pairs, like the inspirational pair, which will tell you about the story between yourself and your other, and all the other different mojos and their inspirational pair. For me, that would be the jeunesse pairing, Jai-Ni and Jinai, and that gives me a lot of information about how I work consciously and my unconscious works and all the real life forms of Jai-Ni and Jinai and how they work. Then you have the same source pair, which, as the name indicates, refers to the two mojos that have the same source power. For me, that would be the power of Jai, so it would be the Jai Alpha, so it would be the Jai-Ni and the Jai-V. So there are similarities that are shared between both because they both have the same source power of Jai, and that's something that you could focus and hone in on when you look at those pairings and how they relate. Have the inverse mojo pair, which refers to the two mojos that have the source and tandem power switched. For example, the Jai-Ni and the Ni-Jai would be the inverse mojo pairing, and that is a relationship that can be really helpful because it can help a person develop their own tandem power by seeing how a person with a very similar mojo is using it as their source, and they can help each other flex that tandem power and develop themselves. So it's a very beneficial pairing to study and to understand. Then you start looking at social alchemy from the perspective of larger groups of 4, the quartets. You have the source song quartet, which represent the 4 mojos that are on the same channel. So the Jez Alpha, which would have either Ji or Jai as their first power, the source power, and that really helps you understand the other mojos that are in that same channel, how you relate to them, what the dynamics are between the 4 mojos that comprise that quartet. So you have Jez Alpha, you have Nez Alpha, you have Vez Alpha, you have Zez Alpha. There's a storyline quartet, which is comprised of the mojos that share the same primary discernment and perception. Like the romantic quartet, of which I'm a part of, has the 4 mojos that share the Nez power and the Jez power. So it would be the Nai-Ji, the Ni-Jai, the Jai-Ni, and the Ji-Nai. Those would be the 4 mojos in that. And that quartet or that grouping helps you understand, because all of these mojos have the same way of looking at the world, the perceiving, pulling information, and also making decisions or understanding the world. So it gives you a lot of information from that perspective of what do the 4 mojos that share that same gathering of information and understanding of the world process, how do they think? How does that grouping think? The chain flow quartet comes from a perspective of a four-phased flow of a person's native perception. It represents a scale between a person's comfortability with risk and change as opposed to repetition and stability. The higher a person's NES power is in their ranking, the more comfortable they'll be with risk and change, as opposed to the higher a person's VES power is in their ranking, the more comfortable they'll be with repetition and stability. I, for example, am part of the second wave quartet, which comprises the four mojos that have the NES power as their tandem power. So that would be Jai Ni, so Ni as the second power, and then the Ji Nai, which have Nai, the NES power as their tandem power as well. And then you have the Zai Ni and the Zi Nai. So all the mojos in that quartet will share that same way of working, which will give you a lot of insight into yourself and others and how people relate as far as their change flow ranking. Then we have the Special Club Quartet. What is that? Special Club Quartet is comprised of the four mojos that share the same perception and also the same way of getting energy, either from the outer environment or the inner environment. So for example, I'm part of the subjective interpretives. Who are those? Those are the Jaini, those are the Naiji, those are the Zaini, and those are the Naizi. So all of those share the NES power as their top perception and also get energized by their inner world. And so that helps you understand, the commonalities between the mojos that operate that same way, have that same common language and, environment, native environment. Gives you a lot of information about yourself, how you gather your energies, how you understand the world, and how those other mojos that operate the same way will react to things and understand the world, and also how they relate to other quartets. The Brain Quad Location Quartet refers to the mojos that share the same priority and how those mojos relate to one another. So back here on the right you have the Towers, which I'm a part of. We call those subjective discerners. Up here you have the Gatherers. Back on the left here you have the Hunters, and up here in the front left you have the Fighters. So they all share the same priority, and that will color the way that they understand the world, the way that they act, what they're going for, what their priority is, says a lot about them and how they will relate to others and to each other, of course. I'm part of the Towers, the subjective discerners, which are the Jaini, the Zaini, the Zaivi, and the Jaivi. And they all share the same priority, which is to be at equilibrium, the Towers, to hold it at equilibrium. They're part of the compass bearings. And so to understand the relationships between those four and how they share that same priority and what does that mean, it helps you really, stretch yourself in a comfortable way, help you understand the connections between the four of you, and of course how you relate to all the other mojos. Shades of Consciousness Quartet is comprised by the four mojos that share the same four conscious powers, but in different ratios. For example, for me it would be the four mojos that share the same conscious powers of Jai and Ni and Vi and Zi, but they'll be in different ratios. And it helps you to stretch yourself because you can see the other mojos that have the same powers as you do, but just in different ratios. So it can really help you understand how that power can be used when it's in a different ranking, and also then help you open your horizons and develop yourself. The Perception Quartet, as the name indicates, it's all four mojos that share the same perception, primary perception. And so this helps you hone in on your powers. Both this one and the next one that I'll talk to you about helps you hone in to that specific power, in this case the perception powers. For me, for example, my grouping is the Ni Dancing Eyes Quartet. And so it would be all of the four mojos that share Ni as their top perception. So the Jai Ni, the Ni Jai, the Zai Ni, and the Ni Zai. So those are the four mojos that I'd be in the grouping with. And so that really helps you understand the power of Ni and how it can be used. When you see Ni used as a primary with my same power that I have as my source, the Jai, for example, as the tandem, as a second power, or for example, the Ni used with a Zest power, with the Zai. That's a different flavor, and can help you understand how else Ni can be used. It can help you stretch yourself, stretch the understanding of yourself, help because you have an understanding of the larger breadth of use of that power. Same thing with the discernment quartet. Discernment quartet, of course, focuses on the primary discernment power, and so that hones in on that discernment power. How do people understand the world primarily, and who are the four mojos that share that same type of understanding? I'm part of the Jai Face Quartet, for example, which is comprised with the four mojos that share Jai as their primary discernment, as their primary way of understanding the world. So Jai Ni, Ni Jai, the Jai Vi, and the Vi Jai. And so all of those have as their primary way of understanding the world the emotive resonating and the keeping at equilibrium and harmony. And so when you see those four mojos and how you are and how they are and how they use the Jai, that really helps you hone in on the power of Jai and what all of its flavors are, capabilities, can help you stretch your own person and connect to those other Jai mojos. Those were the quartets, and now you're looking at the octates. You're looking at it from larger grouping. So those were subsets, the quartets that we talked about. Now we'll be looking at the octates. There's the adaptive directive octate, which is comprised with the mojos that start on the right, the adaptive mojos, the 8, and the 8 mojos that start on the left, the directive mojos. I'm adaptive because my powers of Jai and Ni start on the right side of the brain. So I'll share characteristics with the other 7 mojos that start also on that side of the brain that are also adaptive. So have the free form and unstructured thought as their primary, versus the directives who start on the left side of the brain, and they'll have structured thoughts, and concept of time and language is native to that side of the brain. So you can really see here the commonalities that you have with those other mojos that start on the same side of the brain as you do, and of course then how you relate to the other side, the directive or adaptive, depending on which side of the equation you're on. You have the subjective and objective octates, which is comprised of the 8 mojos that are oriented to the outer world, so the objectives, and those 8 mojos that are oriented towards the inner world or get energized by the inner world, the subjectives. I'm part of the subjectives, so I get energized by the inner world primarily, and that tells you a lot about yourself when you start looking at things from that field as well, and how you relate to the other 8 mojos that are in the different field than you are. The interpretive literal octate refers to the 8 mojos that focus on gathering detail type information, so those would be the literal mojos, versus those who focus on gathering pattern-based information, who would be the interpretives. I'm part of the interpretive mojos because I have Ni as my primary perception, which means that I'm picking up patterns in real time. And so that again will tell me a lot about how I work, how I connect to others. There's the logic-based, values-based octate, which hones in on those 8 mojos that have the logic-based power as their main discernment versus the 8 mojos that have the values-based power as their main discernment. I would be a values-based mojo because I have Jai as my primary discernment, and so I can look at the other 7 mojos within that grouping and see how they relate, because they are values-based, but they do have some differences and then connections, and this grouping helps you see those. You can also look at social alchemy in terms of the perception modulation octets, which would be the 8 mojos that share the same perception balancing. For me, it would be the Vi and the Ni. Those would be my 2 perceptions that I have as my conscious powers, the Ni first and then the Vi, and how they counterbalance one another. That will tell you a lot about yourself and about the other people that have that same modulation counterbalance in their perception and their way of gathering information, and about how the other ones work as well. Discernment modulation octates refer to the 8 mojos that have the same discernment counterbalance. It would be either the Z and the Zhai or the Ji and the Zai. Having the same discernment modulation will impart some commonalities, also some differences, will help you stretch yourself by understanding how that component, how that modulation works in different mojos. There's also the lead corridor octates, which refer to the 8 mojos that either share as their lead, as their source power, a discernment or a perception. Since I have as my source power the power of Zhai, which is a discernment power, I'd be considered a lead discerner. So for example, there's the Ni Zhai, who is similar to me because we have the same 2 top powers, but a Ni Zhai would have as their source power a perception power. And although the source power and the tandem, the first and the second power, we always say they do work together at all times, it does color things that you have a discernment power first versus a perception power. So an understanding power versus a gathering of information power as your first power and the power that gives you the most energy. So it's really good to study that, to understand yourself, to understand others, and understand, start really stretching yourself by looking at mojos that are similar to you but have a perception as opposed to a discernment, or vice versa. And finally, you have the complete set, all 16 mojos, because at the end of the day, you are connected to everyone else, to every other mojo, and everyone is one with the all. Through social alchemy, you keep stretching yourself, and at the end of the day, you understand all of the connections that you share with all of your beautiful fellow humans. It's important to note that everyone has alchemies that are going on, even when they're by themselves. Because even when you're by yourself, you still have your memories of your friends, the people that you've been with in your life, your own spirits, even the building that you're in right now has an energy, has an alchemy to it. So you're never isolated from the phenomenon of social alchemy. Social alchemy really helps with mojo reading, especially when it comes to 4th gear riffing. So when you see a different mojo manifested in different people with different playing styles, that's a 4th gear riff. And for example, because of that, 4th gear riff, other romantics will pop out to me because I see that connection that I have with romantics, and I'll see it manifest in people out there. We'll also be focusing in on inspirational relationships in the show. And inspirational relationships are those pairings of peaking partners. So partners that, because of their powers that they have, they inherently energize and inspire one another, which will then in turn help each other peak. These are very important relationships because it helps you connect directly with your unconscious genius and learn how to develop that and really have that communication with your unconscious genius, which is so crucial for anyone to peak, to get more energy, and to succeed. All the different inspirational relationships are beautiful and have something unique and great to tell about the story of humanity. And we'll be discussing all different kinds of ones, like Ice-T, who's an IZ, and Coco Austin, who's a Nizai, inspirational. Also Prince William, who's a Vaiji, and Kate Middleton, who's a Vijay. Inspirational relationships, because this is a way of connecting with your unconscious genius, can not only be between two people, but also with other things. Like sometimes people project what we call their unconscious genius onto a different land that they want to go to, they have this longing for. Or with any other spiritual connection, intangible connection. It doesn't have to be a physical person that you project that other onto. Many people have different projects that they project their unconscious genius onto that inspires them and gives them energy. For me, for example, it would be this show. This show definitely gives me that connection with my other. So what's the best way to get started learning the Mojo reading language for yourself? Well, one of the things is to get familiarized with those basic components of the language that I just went through, the fields, the human design, get familiarized with those and the powers, the characteristics of the powers, what do they mean, and then see if you can start seeing a part of the phenomenon and honing in on that, and then getting your mojo read. To start honing in on the phenomenon of mojo, I'm going to give you a couple of cues that we found are the ones that are most distinguishable and people can start picking up at first. The first cue that I want you guys to hone in on is a Gear 1 cue, which is the Jai unaware versus Ji aware mouth. Now what that is there's a quality to the mouth depending on the values-based discernment power that the person has. And that has to do with the way that the power works, or the purpose of it, or the process. So for Jai, which for example I have the power of Jai, there's a quality to the mouth that any person that has Jai as their discernment power will have, and you'll be able to spot that. We call it Jai unaware because there is an unaware quality to the mouth. So the mouth is not, because the process of Jai is an internal emotional resonation, it's not supposed to be communicating to an audience a discernible message to move the dynamics of the audience. So what the mouth is doing is unaware of the outer dynamics and how those are interpreting that mouth movement. You'll be able to see that in any of the Jai users. Then you have Ji aware mouth. So the power of Ji, because its goal is to sway and move the human dynamics, Ji has an awareness to the mouth. So the mouth is at all times communicating to the audience what it is trying to influence or move it. So that smile will be meant to make it, put the audience at ease. There is this direct communication feed of the mouth to the outer environment and dynamics. And you'll be able to see that with every Ji user. A case example that I want you guys to take a look at is Nai-Z Robert De Niro versus Nai-Ji Al Pacino. So both of them are Nai Alpha. They have that first source power of Nai, but that mouth will be different. Robert De Niro has Jai as his primary values-based discernment, so he has an unaware mouth, like myself, for example, amnesia. Whereas Al Pacino, he has Ji as his primary values-based discernment, so he has an aware mouth, like Coach and Demas. So take a look at those two. They played in lots of epic movies. They played in movies together. Awesome. Take a look at their interviews. Really start honing in on that mouth and the difference, because they have that similarity again, because they're both Nai Alpha, both have that power of Nai as their first, but they do share that difference and it's very distinct. So hone in on them, start taking a look, and then take a look at the Shiny Shard list and look at the people that have Zhai as their primary values-based discernment versus the ones that have Ji as their primary values-based discernment. And start seeing if you can see the difference, the distinctions between them. Who are the Zhai users that will have that Zhai unaware mouth? You have the Zhai Ni, the Zhai Vi, the Ni Zhai, the Vi Zhai, the Vi Zi, the Nai Zi, the Vi Nai, and the Zi Vi. And who are the Ji users who will share the Ji aware mouth? There's the Zai Ni, the Zai Vi, there's the Vi Zai and the Ni Zai, there's the Nai Ji and the Vi Ji, and there's the Ji Nai and the Ji Vi. The other cue that I want you guys to take a look at is a Gear 2 cue, and it's the Yin versus Yang gesturing. What that refers to is the Yin gesturing is a native gesturing for those 8 mojos that are adaptive, that start on the right side of the brain, as we already discussed. The Yin gesturing will be characterized with soft of wrist, it will be more rolling type movements, it will be more back of the hands, and it will be more within the personal space of the person. It doesn't really go out into the environment, into the group environment. And that will be the natural gesturing for those who are adaptives. On the other hand, you have Yang gesturing. And Yang gesturing is natural for those mojos that are directive, the ones that start on the left side of the brain. And it'll be characterized, I'll try to mimic it, but for me it will be altered. But its Yang gesturing is characterized with rigid of wrist, more conductor-like movement, going out into the group environment, very comfortable with that. Also, not so much of the, not rolling of the wrist because it's not loosed in the wrists. You'll see more enumeration, you'll see more putting things in their segments, conducting, moving. That's Yang gesturing. I want you to start seeing the differences between Yin and Yang gesturing. I'm going to give you a case to study, to see the difference between Yin and Yang. Take a look at these 2 people and see if you can start seeing the difference. The 2 people I want you guys to take a look at are Zai Ni Jim Parsons and Vi Ji Charlie Rose. Now this is an interesting case, and this is gets into the social alchemy too, so it ties into that, because both of them are what we call shades of consciousness. So they share the same powers in their conscious, just in different orderings. And that comes out in the gesturing too, because even though for Jim Parsons, him being an adaptive, his natural gesturing will be a Yin gesturing. And Charlie Rose, he's a directive, so his natural gesturing will be a Yang gesturing. There's some commonalities in that gesturing. There's what we call the spider hand. So it'll be, it's a spidery movement. I can't do it very well. I'll put an image up of Ademus so you guys can see the coolness of it, but it's spider hands. And his though, the Jim Parsons and Ademus and any other Zainis will be yin spider. So it will be softer of wrist, there will be a rolling, there will be more of a looseness to it, and it will be within the personal space and all those other traits that I talked about with yin gesturing. Whereas with Charlie Rose, him being a Vi Ji, a directive, he has natural Yang gesturing. So his are rigid of wrist, but you'll notice still that like spider quality. Because he does have those same conscious powers as the Zaini do, just in different ratios. But his are definitely Yang as opposed to Yin. There's that rigidity of wrist. He's going out into the group dynamics, into the environment, very comfortable with that and very comfortable with conducting. So take a look at those two and start noting the difference between Yin and Yang gesturing, because there are similarities, because there are shades of consciousness, but there is a very distinct difference between the two. You can also pick any other adaptive or directive mojo and start seeing the differences between yin and yang gesturing, but take a look at these two first and see if you can spot it. The 8 adaptive mojos who would have yin gesturing as their natural gesturing would be the Jai Ni, the Zai Ni, the Zai Vi, the Jai Vi, the Ni Jai, the Ni Zai, the Vi Zai, and the Vi Jai. The directive mojos who would have yang gesturing as their natural gesturing would be the Nai Ji, the Nai Zi, the Vai Ji, the Vai Zi, and then the Ji Nai, the Ji Vai, the Zi Nai, and the Zi Vai. And to continue this journey of learning how to mojo read, one of the key things as well, as I mentioned, is to learn what your own mojo is. Reason why is because you need to understand what instrument you are, and that will tell you how you're reading others and others are reading you. It'll help you understand how you develop, how your process works, and how you read. So what do you need to do in order to have your mojo read? What you need to do is to film a 10-minute video of yourself talking about anything, submit it through the Podlair website, and then a qualified mojo reader will read your official mojo and send the response to you. Only accept the real deal. To learn more about why the other models don't work, check out my colleague Ademus's show. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to your questions and video submissions. Till next time on this shared journey of mojo reading.